road less traveled. Because as the persons we are, having a carnal nature, we're always faced with choices. God's way and my way. The way that brings me pleasure and the way that brings God pleasure, makes him happy. And I'm always faced with these challenges. So how do I get the success that I seek in making the right choices that I know I ought to make? There are two roads before us, brothers and sisters. Good lifestyle choices, bad lifestyle choices. And the question we all ask ourselves today, why is it that I keep making the bad choices? And it comes down to the carnal man. And I want to go a little deeper. It comes down to something very simple that we might not have thought about. It comes down to addiction. Sin in itself is an addiction. And the bad lifestyle choices that we make come down to the same principle, addiction. And I'll share with you a paraphrase of what addiction, what an addiction is defined as. And tell me if you can see how our poor lifestyle choices and even sin fits into this definition. An addiction is a condition in which a person engages in the use of a substance or in a behavior for which the rewarding effects provide a compelling incentive to repeatedly pursue that behavior despite detrimental consequences. Sounds like sin? Sounds like poor healthy lifestyle choices? We have this compulsion to seek after the things that give us a pleasurable feeling, a rewarding experience. And even when we know of the negative consequences, we continue nonetheless. We might look at the drunkard on the street and we might want to laugh. But they are battling with a compulsion. It's not that the person who smokes has not been told that he can get lung cancer. It is not that the person who lives a promiscuous lifestyle does not know that they can contract some STDs. But there is something compulsive about the behavior that keeps us going back for more and more, even though we know that there are detrimental circumstances. So how do we break the chain? How do we break that chain? James 1:14 and 15 tells us that everyone is tempted when that person is drawn away by their own desires. The word lust there can be substituted for desires. And then when we are enticed and we follow the desires, we end up down the wrong road. And sometimes we do this and we don't even realize what is happening. But that's really the anatomy of what goes on. And where is the battle raging, brothers and sisters? It is raging right here. Because every decision about health that we make is made here. And this is where the battle is being played out, right here in our minds. We are carnal, soul under sin. But thanks be to Jesus, we can have the victory over this carnal man, because that is why Christ came and lived and died and is in heaven interceding on our behalf. We can have the victory. You don't have to leave here today feeling defeated and say, oh, I'm going to try this health thing one more time, but I know by tomorrow I'm going to fail. Don't leave here with that attitude. By the grace of God, when I leave here today and I make my decision, that grace is going to keep me for the rest of the journey. John Newton wrote those words. It is grace that has brought us safe thus far, and it is grace that will lead us safely home. We can be victorious, brothers and sisters, in this fight. Two roads before us. Which one will you choose? Will you choose the broad road of pleasure, where the majority of the world is traveling, or heading down destruction? Is that the road we're going to choose? Or are we going to choose the road that the few faithful pilgrims are traveling on? The choice is yours. And don't believe that you're going to be lonely. There are many who are on that road to health and happiness. You might be tempted to look over on the other side and say, but those guys on the broad road, they seem to be having all the fun. Where's my fun? Ask God to take your eyes from your immediate circumstances and look further. Because you look across and they are on the broad road having fun. But if you ask God to show you further down, you will see what awaits: destruction. And then you look at your little narrow road that you're striving to make your way on. And the devil is saying, it's boring, there's no fun. But ask God to cast your eyes yonder, and you will see what awaits you. And when you weigh them both, you will realize that it will be worth it all. There's that beautiful song we grew up hearing. It will be worth it all when we see Jesus. One glimpse of his dear face, all sorrow will erase. So bravely run the race till we see Christ. I'm going to ask a few persons here on the platform to assist me so that we can be finished quickly. But I just want to emphasize something here, brothers and sisters. Jesus said, if any man, if any woman, any person will come after me, let that person do what? And take up the cross and follow me. And Luke adds, take up the cross daily and follow me. And there's a word that Luke uses in chapter 13, verse 24. He says we are to strive to enter the straight gate. Remember, we're talking about the road less traveled. Before us are two roads, the broad road and the narrow road. The entrance to the broad road is just as the road itself, big and broad. You can stumble onto the broad road, but for you to enter on the straight and narrow, it takes deliberate effort. And I heard that story many years ago of this was during the world, I think it was the Second World War, that there was this bomb shelter in the community, and persons were told that whenever you hear the sirens, you should make it towards the bomb shelter. But there was this particular man who had his 2 dulcimina suitcases under his arms with all his possessions. And he was holding up the line because he wanted to enter the bomb shelter with his legacies. For you to enter that straight and narrow path, it means that there are some things that you're going to have to leave behind. The devil's road is attractive because he says, come with whatever you want. I'm not going to stop you. If you want to come with your religion, come with it. As long as you're on my road, I have no problem. But Christ is saying, for you to come on my road, you have to deny self. Deny that urge to please yourself. And take up the cross and follow me. The cross is a symbol of self-denial. And I'm going to mention that in my closing arguments. But Luke says we are to strive. We don't hear that word so often in our English language today. But strive means to make deliberate effort. Good health is not going to drop in your laps. It's not going to happen. It takes deliberate effort. And we try every day when we talk to our patients to ask them, we know that you have the sweet tooth, but you also have the diabetes. So you need to resist. You can't just give in and just say, oh, I like this, and give in to the pleasure. You have to deny self, deny the pleasure. And you know the beauty of it, brothers and sisters, you think you might be losing out. But after practicing God's way, you will begin to find that you derive pleasure from pleasing God. And the pleasure you used to thrive upon so many years before, you don't need it anymore. Because you're now happy in making God happy. But it means you have to step out and give him a try. And it doesn't take long for you to realize that you will be happy as heaven is happy and heaven looks down. You know, the angels in heaven looking down at us, at what Christ has done, and seeing us continuing on this destructive path, must be wondering to themselves, what is wrong with these people? After all that Christ went through, denying himself and taking up the cross, these people just look at his cross and just pass it aside, and they head down the road of pleasure. It's time, brothers and sisters, that we take up Christ's offer. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I'm going to ask, Pastor is still here? I need Pastor to do something for me. I'm going to do a little demonstration which will quickly bring everything together. Okay, I'm going to ask you, Pastor, to take this and have a seat. I don't want you to show that yet. All right. All right. I need you to. You're going to stand here. Pastor is the last person who is going to stand. Yeah, you can show it. You can show it. I want you to hold it up for everyone to see. I'm going to give you that one, memory, and yes. And you can come up. And all right. So I want everyone who has one of these except for Pastor to stand up and hold him up high for me. All right? We can all see. Do you want everybody to go on this side? Or it's good? Okay. What I want to explain using this illustration is what really goes on in our minds as we face these challenges, whether to make X decision or Y decision, because we face them every day. Don't we, brethren? Every day we face these challenges. And it's not just about what to eat and what not to eat, you know. Sometimes you go to work and someone gets on your... and you feel like you should forget that you're a Seventh-day Adventist and just lash out. That is going to affect your social well-being and your mental health. So it's not just about food. I don't want you to leave here today thinking, oh, he's here to talk about food. Every aspect of your life, that battle goes on inside here. And because we have a short time, I'm just going to quickly explain to you some of the things that... Okay, can I ask you to sit back for me? No, not you. All right, this is oversimplification. So I don't want anyone to take me to task after this. This is oversimplification of what is happening upstairs. This section of our brain we call the limbic system. This is the part of our brain that is largely responsible for our emotional responses. The things that gives us pleasure, and the place where we tend to experience the pleasure is right here in the limbic system. But the limbic system is going to be dependent. Could you come here for me? Switch places. The limbic system is going to be dependent on what is stored in memory. So let's say, for example, this individual has decided that I'm going to stop eating all right? It can be anything. So we decide that we're going to stop eating chicken. But he has been eating chicken for many, many years. So inside of his memory is all of the pleasurable feeling that come with eating chicken. So when he goes to potluck and he looks at the table and he sees that barbecue, nicely glazed chicken sitting in front of him, the information is going to come to his brain. So he sees it, he smells it, and he's going to ask memory, what is all that? And memory is going to say, that's chicken. Remember the last time you had it? It felt good. It tasted good. So his limbic system might take over his brain, literally hijack his brain and say, go for it. Years ago, macaroni and cheese used to make me sick. And after traveling for many, many days on a Greyhound, I got to my friend's place in Michigan, Sabbath afternoon, just as the benediction was being offered. And good news, I was very hungry, but I heard there was potluck. I went and I ate full my plate, and when I was going around for seconds, I looked at the macaroni and cheese and said, but I didn't see that before. And then when I looked in my plate, there were traces of macaroni and cheese. Because my limbic system saw it, asked memory, and memory said, oh, that's the best thing in the world, man. And my brain was hijacked, and I went for it. Sunday morning, I was in the emergency room because of aches and pains. Now, God has not, you see, while God has created us with desires, you know, because if we never had desires, our life would be boring. We could not enjoy food. Right? We couldn't enjoy life. Smelling a rose would not evoke any emotion. So God has given us these desires. The problem is when we seek to satisfy these desires outside of what God has ordained. So God has put, and it was mentioned this morning, the frontal lobe, which is the part of the brain that can reason things out and make conscious decisions. So the frontal lobe is going to tell Mr. Limbic System over here, remember you made a promise to God a long time ago that you're not going to eat the chicken. So I know you want to go for it because memory tells you it is going to be wonderful. But the frontal lobe is able to apply the brakes and say, Mr. Limbic System, hold your horses. But here is the problem with many of us. Thank you. Can you take your seat? And I need for this young man to come. This is part of the problem with us, is that our frontal lobe is dominated by self. So we have an egocentric frontal lobe. Now, what is going to happen when limbic system says, go for the chicken? What is the egocentric frontal lobe going to say? Go for it. Because all the egocentric frontal lobe is interested in is pleasure, which is what the limbic system also seeks. So we find ourselves in this loop of addiction. And each time we want to break it, our egocentric limbic frontal lobe keeps saying, go for it. So whether it is alcohol, whether it is sexual immorality, whether it is wearing the wrong things, whether it is venting our anger on somebody, if we are simply being led by self, we are always going to give way to pleasure. And we're going to be going around in this loop. So here comes the solution, Pastor. And the reason why I chose them in these sizes, you will understand. Who is bigger? The Christocentric frontal lobe. So when Paul says, I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me.